Peru, 15th century, at an altitude of about 8,000 feet, where the clouds pass below human height, an ancient civilization is building a city that cannot be seen from below and cannot be seen from afar. If you don't know where it is, you'll just walk past the mountain and have no idea that someone carved an entire world out of stone on its ridge. But why the f***? According to the official version, it was the royal residence of Emperor Pachacuti. According to alternative versions, it was a sacred center, an observatory, the first base of an extraterrestrial civilization, or a brothel. But we know for sure that sacrifices were made on this mountain, and the way they did it shocked me. In this video, I will use archaeology, chronicles, and artificial intelligence to show how the Incas were able to build a stone city at a great height without cranes or helicopters. 15th century. The Inca Empire is rapidly expanding under the leadership of Pachacuti, a ruler who not only won several wars but also looked like a madman. He created a centralized system of government, built thousands of kilometers of roads through the Andes, and transformed scattered tribes into the Tawantinsuyu Empire, the four parts of the world. And at this very moment, at the height of its power, a project appears that seems completely illogical. The construction of a city on a narrow mountain ridge between two peaks, Machu Picchu and Huayna Picchu. But there was a problem. There was no natural flat surface on the mountain. The slopes were steep, almost vertical in places. To create a platform for the city, the Incas literally began to carve out the mountain. The Inca Empire did not know the wheel as a transport technology, did not have horses, and did not use iron tools. Everything you see today at this altitude was delivered or processed by human hands. It all started right here, or somewhere nearby. Engineers identified natural lines of cracks in the rock and the contours of future terraces. Then, unlucky people split the rock with stone hammers made of diorite and andesite, harder rocks than granite itself. Wooden wedges were driven into the cracks, moistened with water, and when the wood swelled, the rock split apart. It was a slow process. It could take several days to release one large block. The material was not brought from far away. Most of the stone is local. Some of the blocks were simply cut from the mountain itself. But even local stone had to be moved tens of meters up or down the slope. For this purpose, earthen embankments were used, which were gradually raised along with the structure. The blocks were pulled with agave fiber ropes and logs were placed under them. At the same time, the foundation of the city was created, a system of terraces. The Incas turned the slope into a giant multi-layered structure. Each terrace consisted of a retaining wall made of precisely fitted blocks, behind which large boulders were laid. It is not known exactly how the Incas lifted huge boulders weighing as much as a passenger airliner, but it was definitely not the way artificial intelligence imagines it. When the platforms were ready, the precise stonework began. This is where the biggest question arises today. The blocks are fitted so tightly that a knife blade cannot fit between them. The stones were fitted by grinding them. They were placed against each other, the protrusions were marked, the excess was removed, and they were placed again. And so on dozens of times. It took weeks for one element. Therefore, it is not surprising that the descendants of the Incas have not yet completed Machu Picchu, judging by how it looks, and now everything is ready to build an entire city here. However, this requires thousands of workers who are willing to perform extremely difficult work at high altitudes for free. I don't know what contracts Emperor Pachacuti offered, but almost all the villages of the empire sent their men to do hard labor for several years. And many of them did so under duress. Some people worked with stone, some laid roads to the complex. And some rested and did nothing. They were the managers. Living at this altitude meant constantly feeling short of breath. People lived in temporary barracks below the main complex. The stone platforms were still under construction, so most people slept on compacted earth under light shelters made of reeds and fabric. Rain washed away the slopes, cold penetrated at night, and during the day the sun burned. The food was not very varied. They ate corn porridge, potatoes, and sometimes llama meat. Assholes. Well, to increase endurance and maintain discipline, the workers were given chicha, an alcoholic beverage similar to beer. The construction of the buildings themselves began with the temple area. The stone for the sacred buildings was processed longer and more precisely. The blocks were fitted so that they could withstand earthquakes. And it worked. The city still stands today thanks to this technique. But not everyone could keep up. If a person refused to work or tried to escape, the punishment was exemplary. And so that YouTube doesn't turn off our monetization, we won't show it to you. And now we are in the recreation area after a hard day's work. To prevent professional burnout, the Incas complained about their bosses, discussed their colleagues, and spread rumors related to the supernatural. The mountain was considered sacred. The Incas believed that Apu, the spirit of the mountains, was watching over their work. If a stone cracked or someone fell off the slope, it was interpreted as a sign, and to calm the mountain, sacrifices were made. Sometimes these were animals, sometimes they were children from noble families who were sent to the heights as a gift to the gods. And after 20 years of construction, the main buildings in the city were completed. Immediately after that, all the workers were expelled from here back to their villages, and the poor were no longer allowed here. In the center of the complex, you can now see the Temple of the Sun. The stone here is more precisely cut than in the residential areas. The windows are oriented so that on the day of the winter solstice, light passes through the opening and falls exactly on the sacred stone inside. And if you think this is a coincidence, try accidentally setting a window so that it works with astronomy without a telescope or GPS. Nearby is Intihuatana, the place where the sun is tied. A stone pillar that functioned as a calendar. Its shadow was used to determine the change of seasons. For an agrarian empire, a mistake in the sowing season meant famine. As you can see, this people no longer exists, so perhaps this calendar was not entirely accurate. Part of the city served an administrative function. Representatives of the nobility lived here, possibly Pachacuti himself or his entourage. The other part was home to artisans. They made ceramics, worked metal, and wove fabrics. Terraces functioned in parallel. They not only held the slope, but also provided food. Different crops were planted at different levels. The microclimate changed even at a height of a few meters. The Incas grew corn at the bottom and something else at the top. But usually the main event here was the Kapakok ritual. These were special events: the death of a ruler, a great eclipse, a disaster. Children from noble families were chosen as pure for the gods. They were taken high into the mountains, given alcohol and narcotic plants, and they fell asleep. And then they were left there forever. The bodies found by archaeologists on these terraces were preserved thanks to the cold. In such pleasant vibes, the city existed and developed for about 100 years. But then, the Spaniards came. 1532. 160 Spaniards landed on the coast of Peru and were joined by local residents who did not like living under Inca rule. For some time, they tried to fight the conquerors, but after a civil war between the heirs of the empire and epidemics brought by the Europeans, this people finally disappeared. The majestic Machu Picchu was simply deserted. The Spaniards did not burn it down. This is obvious because it was made of stone. After a few decades, vines covered the stairs, the terraces got overgrown, the stone remained. And only a few centuries later, in 1911, American archaeologist Hiram Bingham accidentally found it and revealed Machu Picchu to the whole world. However, local farmers always knew about it. Today, we look at Machu Picchu as a tourist postcard. But if we remove the tourists and our incredibly accurate AI reconstructions, a different feeling remains. The Incas were so advanced that they created an entire stone city on a mountain, but not so smart as to avoid being destroyed by 100 Spaniards.